Brian, this is Reggie, and this is R&B Talks. Reggie, we have something to celebrate. Are you ready?
I am waiting on bated breath.
This is double-digit episodes. This is episode 10.
Episode 10.
We have
the big 10.
That's right. When I was 10, I have no idea what I was doing. But on episode 10, we're going to talk about awesome stuff like we have before. But it's 10 episodes, man. I remember when we did episode 1, I was like, I hope we get 5 done. Now we've doubled that. Great expectations.
Yeah, but I mean, like, consistency is key here, man. Because, I mean, really, like we've talked about, we're not really looking at this to be like the to be some smashing success, but we do want to do this enough to where, like, it's, cool, Well,
I'd like to have a following.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Don't get me wrong. If this became a smashing success, I wouldn't be like, oh, but really what this is about is just getting some words out to people that are good, wise words, right?
Like, I was telling my had some in-laws come in town from Colorado, and they were asking about it. And I'm like, look, here's the main point: is that there's a lot of people that feel isolated and alone, especially after COVID, and like it's like, because they don't really think the same way that the media says they should, or whoever says, all the talking heads out there. And we're really just saying, hey, you're not alone.
Yeah.
It's okay to be an actual critical thinker, to like actually want freedoms.
It's okay not to fall in line with everyone else.
Yes. It's okay to be a nonconformist in the current culture we live in.
It's okay to be conservative and know that you're not a bad person for feeling that way. That sucks me, man. How many people I've talked to and they'll tell me, they'll be like, man, I've talked to 4 or 5 people that I've gotten to listen, and they're all the same thing. Well, man, I love your material. I really agree. I'm really glad that you guys will say it. You say it too, man. It's free country.
Yeah.
I mean, you're allowed to talk about it. It's okay.
I'm not going to not say.
So,
wife and girls went out to Taekwondo camp.
Nice.
On Friday, right? So I had the whole homestead here to myself,
Mm-hmm.
And like, you used to think, okay, cool. Then you must have been so happy and all this stuff. I wasn't. It actually bothered me that they weren't here.
It's because you like your family.
Well, not just that. I think it's more than that. It's like, I think because I'm like active in it, it's like that's part of my team that's absent. In other words, that's what it feels like, right? And not that I was like, oh, what was me? But I mean, it really was like, I was thinking about it because I thought at one point I would have been maybe like thankful for that or something, but really I wasn't. It was like, I was really kind of like bummed that they weren't around.
I get that. For me, I'm okay when the kids are gone, and I don't mean that in like a mean way, because when I was a kid, my kids are teenagers, man. They're out doing their thing and hanging out with their friends. And I knew that was all part of it. But when my wife is gone, it's difficult because I feel like I don't have a sounding board. And if I'm thinking certain ways or I'm looking at how to do or what to do or any of that, it's tough, man, because you want that sounding board. You want to be like, hey, what do you think of this? Because if you say that to yourself, people might think you're crazy.
Yeah.
Well, but that's okay. But,
I think if you're doing it, if you're like doing the family thing close to right, it becomes a solid foundation. So you're like, that's a cool thing. Anyway, it was just an observation. I was like thinking yesterday, I was like, man, this is cool. I can sit around and watch whatever I want, and do whatever I want without having to worry about, XYZ, but I kind of wish they were there, it's, and it's like, I truly realized, like we talked about with the wives and the husbands and stuff, like, my wife helps me be better.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that she forces me to do anything. It's not that she's whatever. I mean, it just, when she's there, I am better. It's, and if anything, it's just because I'm able to like, I just know that she's there. Just know that she's there. She got crap covered,
Yeah. For me, it's hard when my wife is gone because of safety reasons.
Well, there's that.
I don't trust the world.
I don't either. Not at all.
And when she's out of town, even if the boys are with me, I worry.
Yep.
I worry if she's okay. I worry if she's safe. I worry if she's, and I don't usually sleep well, right? Like I kind of sleep light.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I should be able to hear the phone. I should be able to.
Oh, yeah.
So, which, you know, I find that troubling that it's gotten to the point where everything you do, you got to worry.
I don't think worry. It's not really worry. It's just about being prudent.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know, you're the understanding is that this is it's not a Wild West, like criminal running rampant, like purge kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
But there are dangers and there are bad things. There are bad people, and you know, it's just there. So it's like, I don't worry necessarily, but it's like, it is on my mind. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So that's kind of how I look at it, because at some point you have to bring faith into it. You have to be like, look, man, there's a hedge of protection. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't always mean that everything is going to be hunky dory, but it does mean that everything's going to work out the way he wants it to work out. Yeah. I mean, you know, so
sometimes it's not always great.
No, I mean, it's because we're free. We have free will, man. And we are given the task of stewardship. Yeah. I don't know. There's part of that that's about that, you know?
Well, I have a plan. Take my kids to Cleveland to see the old Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
A few months. And then somebody laid some info on me today that Cleveland is short 1,000 kids.
Oh, nice.
And has a very high rate of human trafficking. So now I'm thinking.
Yeah, like that's probably not where I'm going to go.
If I go there, I'm going to have to chain them to me, because I don't want to have to execute someone because they tried to take my kids, man. That's not good.
No,
right?
bro.
That's a very horrifying statistic, and now it's stuck in my brain. Like I can't get rid of it. Like, what in the heck is going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think in this day and age, though, and the age of your kids, I don't know if I'd be too worried about it, although I would not let them go anywhere by themselves.
Well, I won't let them out of my sight.
Well, that's what I mean.
The whole time
it's the same thing.
But I've been reading a lot, and apparently there's just scary, ridiculous people out there. And that's part of, I hate that, because I remember when I used to be able to just be like, hey, we're going to go do this and hang out and have fun. And those worries weren't there. Right. And now it's like everywhere you go, those worries are there. Right. And that's a tough, that's a tough one to swallow. Like, oh, now I have to be like a harpy of protection around my kids in order to make sure that they're safe. Right. So, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, statistically, you're right. My kids are not necessarily in the range of people that get taken, but who also knows what kind of crazy goofball is out there and what they're thinking. Right.
Well,
desperate people do desperate things.
Runaways are like a big one. And, because even at teenage, runaway will get caught up in that stuff because they get, all kinds of reasons. But yeah, I don't know. If you're vigilant, you should be fine, man.
Okay. I would tell my wife that I will be vigilant.
I'll be
very vigilant.
Like what would that be? Like the village? Something with the village.
I know. Maybe it's being diligent over your village.
I guess. There you go.
Hey,
I created a word.
Look at you. Next thing you know, Urban Dictionary, here we come.
The Pain Dictionary. Vigilant.
Okay, so are you ready? Today we're going to talk about a very uncomfortable subject for some people. Reggie, would you like to introduce this subject?
Well, money and finances.
That's right.
Now, I think this topic in general is way too broad to cover, because we've made money and finances so complicated that we could spend we could spend our entire channel's existence on money and finances, which there are. So I think we are talking about money and finances, but I mean, in what way are we talking about money and finances, Brian?
Well, for me, the way I want to discuss it is I want to do the opposite. I want to simplify it, you know. And two, you know, I think there's some statistics that people need to be aware of. And I think there's some biblical principles that need to be involved. And once we get there, I think it breaks it down and makes it pretty simple, right? You know, I mean.
Well, to an extent. So I think, first off, let's define what money is. So did you do any research behind that?
Well, money is, you know, it's currency, but okay, so I did, and this is a very deep well of information that I got down into. But I mean, the fact of it is, money is, for all intents and purposes, not real in the sense that the American dollar is not backed, right? It's not backed by any kind of gold or silver anymore. Why they stopped doing that, I have no idea. They pulled all the security out of the money and made it worth nothing.
A lot of reasons.
Number two, depending on where inflation's at, your dollar isn't necessarily worth $1, right? So let's go back. Okay.
So what this is from, I'll put, of course, we'll do like we normally do. All the links will be down the bottom. Andrew Beattie wrote this at investopedia.com, and he said, according to some theories, money is inherently an intangible concept. Currency, on the other hand, is the physical or tangible manifestation of the intangible concept of money. Mm-hmm. So really what we're talking about is, if you look at there's another link I'm going to post down. It has like a history of like we're bartering and all that stuff. And it kind of gives a brief overview from that point of view. So if we think about things like, it's been part of human history for the last 5,000 years in some form. Historians generally agree that a system of bartering was likely used. It was 6th century BC Greek poet, which I'm not going to butcher this, Xenophanes, quoted by the historian Erodes. I'm butchering these names, by the way, ascribed the invention of metal coinage to the Lydians in 600 BC. So that was like the first coins were back then. They were made of electrum, which was a mixture of silver and gold, stamped with pictures of various denominations. In 1260 CE, the Yuan dynasty of China moved from coins to paper money. So that was when we saw actual paper money come into play. The first paper currency issued in European governments was actually issued by their colonial governments in North America. So they didn't even get paper currency until the colonial North America colonies created it. They did that. It was kind of a complicated process of like all these, the way they were trading over, between, the colonists and England, right? It was like, they were having to, because it really, things were worth different money. And it was really hard to kind of get, values correct. So they went to, well, let's just have a piece of paper. But all that leads up to what we had when we had the gold standard that came about. And I think, what was that? 1821 was when the UK introduced the gold standard. But so in the 70s, by the 1970s, pretty much everybody's not on the gold standard anymore.
Yeah, no.
We have what's called a fiat currency. A fiat meaning a decree, so of our sovereign government that says, this is how much this is worth, but it actually doesn't have any intrinsic value to it whatsoever. So that's kind of like very, very, very brief rundown of like what money came from and started from. And really, if you think about it, like if you had like a blacksmith and he made you like a tool or something, you would trade with him like some corn or flour or something that you had. And then that just became something where it was like more, it was easier to trade with something that you had that it was of certain value, whether that be pieces of metal
silver or gold,
right? Silver, gold, and then that just went to paper, and that used to mean something that you could trade that in for something. But then, now we're into the point where it's just a government-backed kind of denomination of value.
Well, now we're even further down the road because you have Bitcoin, you have Venmo, you have Cash App.
Venmo's not.
Yeah, but
those aren't really currency, though. Those are just applications that allow you.
But if you look at Facebook Marketplace and you look at all the trading sites, Venmo is referred to as a currency. They don't want to talk. They don't want dollars. They don't want cash. They don't want coin. Can you Venmo it to me?
But they're Venmoing currency, though.
They are, but it's not paper currency because you never see digital. It. But it's still legal. It's legal tender without having a physical form.
Well, it's like me, and I think we'll get into this a little bit, but like I don't use cash, really. Don't ever use cash. I used to use an American Express card. We buy everything on an American Express card and I pay it off every month. Mm-hmm. That's how we operate. And I really do that because American Express has like protections for me as a buyer, especially because of all the online stuff that we do buy and everything else. So if transaction doesn't get, somebody rips us off or get lost or, something, they will take care of it really quickly. And they give me points on top of that. So by using the American Express card, I actually get my Christmas paid for just by using that card for, paying for things. Mm-hmm. I have an Amazon card. We buy a lot of stuff off Amazon. So I use an Amazon card so that I get points back from that. So then again, it's like that kind of thing. So no, I don't rarely do. Am I like exchanging paper bills with anybody anymore?
Wait a minute, man. I gave you paper bills earlier.
Paper bills. Well.
So what you're saying is I gave you like corn. I gave you corn. That's what you're saying.
Yes, Brian, you gave me corn.
I essentially traded you corn. I wasn't wearing like a deer skin or anything while I did it either.
No. Although I think it would be much cooler if you did give me corn.
I think it would be super,
here's this much value.
It would be super weird. I think it would be just super weird, right? So, but okay. So, all right, let's talk about finance. We know what money is. And we know that finance does not exist without money. So let's talk about finance.
Which is just a system of money.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, there's different kinds of finances here.
Yep.
The most important for everybody probably listening to this is the family finance. The finances of the family, I should probably say. So it's like you don't operate your family as like a profit center. You're not trying to really like take in and out. Like you're not trying to make that where you're continually having money to grow your family. You invest in your family, but I'm saying a business has got a different kind of methodology and process behind money because their whole purpose is to
make a profit
that can then be invested further into the business, grow the business, you make, whatever it is, right? Your family, you're not operating that way. It's really about, because you're not taking that money. You might save it, but you're not necessarily always taking that money in the express purpose of building a bigger family or
not
more
necessarily
family.
Building a family or more family. I mean, I think you want to have a war chest, right? In case something goes down or, because I think one of the most disturbing things I've heard, and this is through some research is, and here's just a couple of statistics. 66% of respondents, this is from bankrate.com. The APA reported that the highest number of people experienced money-related stress since 2015. 66% of Americans report feeling daily money stress.
Yeah.
And then CNBC.com, 70% of Americans feel financially stressed. A combination of higher prices for basic goods and services, increasing borrowing rates on credit cards, auto loans, mortgages, debt, and little to no financial cushion is eating away at people's sense of financial security. They say that only 45% of U.S. adults have a emergency fund, and only, I think, 10% of them does the emergency fund go beyond $1,000.
I mean, I would be in more than that 10%.
Yeah.
You know, but not by much.
Yeah.
I would say that because I want to get to the place where I have months of income in there. But having a young family, we've only really been in this house for 7 years now. Mm-hmm. So I'm really there's like a lot of things that we're trying to do. But okay, before we get into this, let me just say that I want to talk about this in a little bit about how the different ways to use money better. Okay. But first though, I think we need to, we're talking about finances. Mm-hmm. So your family finances and how that should be, there's some biblical standards behind that. There's business stuff about how that should go. There's nonprofit stuff about how that should go and all that works. What I think is critical to understand though, to help people, like the best guess I could find, I want to find out the global estimated wealth that we have. Mm-hmm. I just was curious.
The global estimated
like
wealth.
how much money does on earth is there? Okay. How much do we really have?
Okay.
The best number I got was $463.6 trillion at the end of 2022.
That's the amount of financial abundance amongst the
Well, I don't know about
world.
it. I wouldn't say because it's classified different because you got to think about it. I don't know if they're not saying like this is how much money is sitting in accounts or anything. That could be like
it's just
assets,
how much existent currency there is,
how much existing wealth.
Okay,
right? Wealth could be assets, investments, money, whatever. So if you think about a world, there's $463.6 trillion of wealth in the globe,
and none of it is here. Because we are $33 trillion in the hole as a country.
Well, okay, we can talk about that too, though, because people need to ask the question: where is that? Who do we owe money to?
Well, we owe money to other countries. We owe money to ourselves for spending. Part of the national debt is. I mean, it's debt. How do we know what a debt is, right? It's how much money is incoming, how much versus how much money is outgoing. So if you make $10,000 a year and you spend $20,000 a year, then you have a $10,000 debt, right? It's if all your money goes to pay your debt, which doesn't,
I think the last time I looked, 60-something% was to the American people.
Yeah.
Right. So bonds and stuff like that kind of. So, I mean, it might be $33 trillion or whatever it is, but there's a big chunk of that is just to the American people.
Well, that's the scariest thing though, because thinking about all the entitlements, bonds, Social Security, all the things that are supposed to be there for the American people. If somebody put the marker on the table and called for that today, it's not there. If somebody said, hey, if the American people stood up and said, hey, we want our 66%, our government couldn't cover it. And that's the scary part for me in the sense of, because you know me, man, I work multiple jobs. I take being a provider for my family very seriously because
we know.
For so many years, I didn't, honestly. I just lived paycheck to paycheck, whatever we did. I was a pleaser, right? Hey, oh, you want that? All right, I'll buy it, right? But I take very seriously now providing security for my family. And one of the fails for me, and one of the reasons why I'm struggling right now with, our government in general and the decision I'm going to make coming in the next election and all those things is, despite who performed well and did what, they didn't do enough to make sure that they can cover the spread, right? Like we've become so wickedly irresponsible as a government with money.
Yeah.
That I feel like I feel like this could turn into the monsoon, right? Like,
okay, but when we talk about nation economics, though, there are clearly different ways to go about the economy.
Yeah. So,
and they're good and bad with both of them. Now, let's be honest. But one of the key points to like if we're going more towards the socialism,
yes,
communism. I shouldn't say because communism goes beyond economics, but is that you're putting the money from the people. You have a governing body that decides where that goes. They take care of the needs of the people, and they dictate that. The people really don't have too much say in that most of the time. Mm-hmm. Their goal there, though, is not to have things done the most efficient, the best priced, or whatever. It's a lot of times it's like, where can we have something like? I'll give an example. If somebody said, well, we can fix a road and we can fix it to where it doesn't have to be worked on ever again. It's going to cost X amount, right? Or we can fix this road with this, but we have to work on it every 3 months. And that'll cost way more over the lifespan of everything. They'll choose that way so that they can, and the goal of that is so that you're having people, jobs, to keep doing that. So you're not spending what's efficient. You're actually spending money to try to keep more jobs going. Your idea is to continually grow the job market by what decisions you're making.
That's true, but also socialism has a 100% failure rate.
No. Right? I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you go towards that way.
If you go towards that way, yeah.
Okay.
And here's the thing: the original intention of socialism, in all earnest, was originally thought to help the people, right?
Well, yeah.
Nobody knows how to control anything. Nobody knows how to put anything together. We'll do it this way. But what it does is it punishes innovation, because the whole point of socialism is if you have $50,000 and I have $15,000, then you have to take whatever you have and give me because we have to be equal, right? So
equal outcome.
So I feel like it punishes innovation. It punishes success. But I feel like what we're in right now is really just, it's this, I say this, and this is very controversial. We live in a republic. We are not a true democratic society simply because if it was a true democratic society, there wouldn't be a house. There wouldn't be a electoral college. It would just be the people decide.
Correct.
So I feel like that has been taken advantage of.
Yes.
In a lot of ways. Because a lot of people are no longer concerned about, unlike some of our elder statesmen in the House and the Senate, that have taken advantage of being in there long term and entrenched themselves. I don't feel like a lot of representatives are really concerned about making any changes. It's about getting in and making money and getting out.
Look at the net wealth of people who, and not everybody, but a lot of these people who get into Congress or the Senate or president, whatever it may be. Look at their net wealth between when they go into there, when they come out. And I guarantee you that does not equate to their yearly annual income. It does not.
No,
it's vastly more than that.
Well, if you look at, let's take Barack Obama, for instance. His net worth was not real high when he went into office. And he's now worth hundreds of millions of dollars with book deals and appearances and speaking engagements. And
yeah,
he now, and let me also be clear too. If I spend 8 years as president and I come out and they're like, dude, we like you so much, we're going to pay you $500,000 every time you speak, I'm going to be talking a lot because but one of the things too is, and I walk this fine line, you know, I don't quite, when is enough, right? Like, when is enough? Like, I am as conservative as the guys you're going to run into. But I also do ask myself this question: when is enough? Like, when you hit the $1 trillion mark, is that enough? When you hit the $500 billion mark, is that enough?
There's biblical principles,
you know,
and there's actually philosophical principles that say the more wealth, the more knowledge, the more you have, the less you're happy.
Yeah, I mean,
you're not. I mean, that's really where. I mean.
You know, that's why I kind of admire to some level Warren Buffett. You know, he's worth tons, but he lives in the same house he's always lived in. He didn't let that change the core of who he was.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm going to still eat McDonald's for lunch, and, you know, he doesn't change those habits.
I mean, Sam Walton.
Yeah.
From Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
That dude drove the same pickup truck for I don't know how many years, right? I mean, okay, there's some attitudes behind that, but, and look, I know some really wealthy people that I don't think badly of at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some really wealthy people who give a lot.
Yes.
So I don't think, so if we're talking about money and finances, wealth does not automatically take on a negative connotation.
And that's not what I'm saying. But you know, one of those questions is,
I wanted to qualify that though.
Yeah. What do we, you know,
when is enough?
When is enough?
Right? I mean, look, if you built a business and you want to keep growing it, because I mean, look, if your goal is to help people, growing your business, hiring more people, you're helping more people. If you're being more profitable and you're able to do more with your business, you're able to buy company programs and stuff like that. You're able to give more to this. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and look, we have to understand that our view of money in this country is probably much different than most of the world. Because we live in a very, very rich country still.
Well, one of the worries that I have, and especially with this younger generation, is there's an entitlement.
Well, that's got to go.
I'll tell the story 1,000 times, and I'll tell it 1,000 more times, because every time I tell it, I still have a sense of shock. I was an operations manager for a company, and, you know, guy walks in, he's probably in his 20s. He was an Uber driver. He was wearing cutoff jean shorts, flip-flops, and a tank top to a job interview.
Nice.
Which was my first red flag. And we sit down, and I said, hey, you know, what are you looking to make? Which was part of the conversation. And he told me, he goes, well, as an Uber driver, I've been making about $22,000 a year. He goes, but I'd like to make somewhere around $90,000 a year. And I think you can pay me that. Zero experience on the job, zero knowledge of what I did, yet felt entitled to ask me for that amount of money. And with a straight face, I laughed. Like, I started laughing. I was like, and he's like, I'm not joking. I was like, I am. This is ridiculous. This is just a ridiculous conversation to be having. Right? Like, I've always it took me a lot of years to build up a lot of management experience for me to step out into those roles and ask for more money and be confident doing it. But you have to put the work in, you know, to get the financial security. There has to be some work put in, right?
This brings up a good topic.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're talking about how we think of money and how we approach money or finances in the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is huge. It's okay to be content with what you make as long as you're content with what you're doing, where you're at. In corporate America, we were talking about this earlier. If you want to move up, keep going up that ladder, there's an expectation that you will be ambitious and you will go for more money and more responsibility and more things. If you're not doing that, or if you're not making it known that you want those things, that you're looking for that, working towards that, you won't get there. There, corporate America is exists to make money.
Yeah.
The core of everything they do is all around making profit.
Yes.
So in your own occupation, if you're in corporate America, if you want to move up, that's one of the core things you should be doing is how can you show that you do want to move up? How can you exemplify that you're worth more? Mm-hmm. Because and it all boils down to the money they pay you, what are they going to get out of? And if you're demonstrating that if you pay me X, I will give you Y, and that comes out in their favor, that equation works. But if you keep saying, pay me X, you get Y, and that does not come out in their favor, then it's never going to work.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is. It really doesn't. That's how corporate America works. So I think going into this a little bit, when you're a person with a Christian worldview, and there's principles behind that, which we can get into, but I'm supposed to not love money. I'm supposed to be content with what I have and all this kind of stuff, which is true. There's nothing wrong, though, with moving up. There's nothing wrong with promotions and everything. You do have to be a little ambitious and a little not money hungry, but you have to play the game.
Well, you have to understand that's part of the equation, right? You can't take it out of the equation.
No.
And even in what I do, there has to be a level of ambition for you to want to get more and do more. And
right.
Partly because in what I do, profitability comes from managing my time. Because if I manage my time, I can have more clients, I can do more things, right? So I can grow my business. But it's funny that you speak about biblical principles. There is a book called Wealth and Wisdom, the 5 Bible-based Principles of Financial Life. Okay. And I will post this book. We'll post this. I got this, but it says Wealth and Wisdom. It's a 5 Bible-based principles on financial life and financial management. Explores 5 biblical principles of financial management. These principles include tithing, stewardship, contentment. You brought that up. Generosity and saving. Interesting question. Because I look at these things, and this is kind of how I try to live, right? Give a little, maintain your money, protect your money, invest your money wisely, be content where you're at, and before you grow, be content with who you are. Generosity, be generous to others, and saving, right? If you look at our current world model of finances, it includes none of those. That's the best way to say it. Our current world model includes none of those. And this is a statistic, and I don't know where I got it. I read it in an article the other day, but I will find it. I'm going to dig it back up. Talked about influencers, like Instagram influencers and TikTok influencers. And I think 8% of them make a 6-figure salary from their postings. 92% are bankrupt.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's funny that you say that, because, saving is definitely not happening. I mean, 80 something % of Americans are saying that a $400 expense would be something they couldn't cover. That's a massive number, right? Stewardship. Well, if you're not saving, you're not doing good stewardship, right? You're not protecting. Tithing, man, that's a biblical thing. So there's a very small percentage who are tithing into the church and helping it grow. Contentment. If you're an Instagram influencer, you're not content. That's why you're an influencer.
I know. I mean, look, they're but that because lot of those influencers, though, are very cultural centric.
Yeah.
So they have to, in order to maintain their influence, they have to be in the culture and they have to live like that. And that's no wonder.
Well, but then you got guys like, a shout out to Mr. Beast. He gives away most of what he makes. And I've watched his videos. My sons are huge fans, right? Like, they love Mr. Beast. He was on my man Joe Rogan's podcast, and I listened to that whole podcast. It was actually one of the best I've heard. But he really is out there at the end of the day to help people. And I feel like there are some out there, right? There's some good, really generous, talking about Joe Rogan, talking about The Rock, talking about these guys that are influencers that are also out there really, really helping people, like really putting in effort to help people, when they need it. And I feel like the ones that are hyper successful, right, are following a lot of these principles. Right?
Yeah.
And what shocks me is how it escapes the majority, right? Like, everybody says, well, I want to be the next Joe Rogan. Well, you better be generous, because Joe Rogan's a very generous guy, does a lot. You better be, he has to have good stewardship over the product that he produces in order to keep it quality so that people want to listen to it. There's a lot that goes into that, right? So what is it? Where do you think the disconnect is where people say, oh man, I've made money, but it's all gone. Like, where is that disconnect?
Materialism, dude.
Yeah. Well, that's part of it.
Well, so it's like this. You don't understand it as fleeting.
Yeah.
There's a concept with any of this stuff where, if we think about it, money's really just it is just a concept that is thrown out there in the ether that we just kind of use as currency to trade back and forth with stuff about goods and services. And I think it's like all about why some of this stuff, like in general, why families these days aren't saving. They haven't adjusted their quality of life for what they make.
Yeah.
On a consistent basis. Someone may do that, right? They may say, okay, well, I make, let's say a family makes $50K a year. They're like, okay, this is how much we can spend, whatever. But then they're not aware of, like, inflation has caused some things, but they didn't change anything. Mm-hmm. They're still spending the same amount of money, but that same amount of money actually costs them more money now.
Yeah. And they get way less.
That's what I'm saying. So the stewardship part becomes, it really boils down to, like, staying on top of that, just your finances.
Yeah.
Okay. And these influences and stuff go beyond that because they're in the public eye. So there's a expectation of them to do whatever that is, right? I mean, if it's some beauty person, well, obviously they're going to spend a ginormous amount of money on beauty stuff for their own look or their place they live in, car they drive. All that stuff is going to be important to them. So they're not going to say, well, they're not going to save anything. I need to buy a car that's flashy in order to keep up with my look. Mm-hmm. That's going to get them in trouble because it's not, you're not looking at your income. You're not looking at your outflow and saying, where's that balance out?
Well, I think a lot of it too is that there's no value to them in the currency itself. And I think a lot of this comes from my background where when I grew up, pardon me while I adjust my mic, I grew up pretty money poor.
I do.
And that changes the way we view it, right? But a lot of the current influencers haven't experienced that. They haven't experienced being money poor. They've experienced being and that's one of those things, the dangers of instant success. Because a lot of them you'll hear, well, I posted this one video and it got 5 million views, and the next thing you know, I'm the next big thing. It scares me a little because I often think, man, what if I had that kind of success? And then right after that, I think, man, what if I had that kind of success? Would I be able to hold myself together to have that instantaneous explosion? But part of it too is, they don't have any, there's no value to it, right? Like it's a feel good thing. It's not a do right thing.
Well, yes, but I do stray away from a little bit of the traditional conventional wisdom of like saving and stuff. Not that I don't, but I know I'm only here for so long.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have very long here to live on this earth, so I'm going to use it, whatever that is, right? So there's a balance between getting stuff you want versus like saving for X, Y, you putting on emergency fund, all this stuff. There is a balance there, and everybody has to figure that out. For anybody who's doing like, I guess this is going back to this. It's kind of like, look, there's lots of resources.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of different philosophies on how to run your family finances, regardless if you're an influencer or not, or whatever. You got all the way from the Dave Ramsay philosophy of like, you don't buy anything with credit. You always cash. You have 6 months in an emergency fund. You do this, to people who say you don't save anything because it's unsafe, it's this and that, to using like home equity loans or life insurance policies or whatever the case is. There's all kinds of ways to manage your finances for you and your family.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at, I don't know how many of them, to be honest, because it's like at some point you have to say, how can I use my money better?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a stage to this, I think. And let's go back to this. You get to the point where you're an adult, and now you got to start making money for yourself and paying for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a job, you start doing things, and you're like, okay, I got this. I got to pay my rent. I got to pay gas to get places. I got to pay, whatever car expenses or travel, whatever it is, right? You're doing all that. So you get that under control. That takes a while. You got to figure that out. So they're okay, I can spend, then you figure out I can spend this much money. I make this much money. I can spend this much money. I got this. You have to make a choice. The first choice is how much of the money I get in do I have to spend on cost of living? How much money do I want to save? How much money am I going to just throw to what I want? You have to make that choice, and you have to put that down and make that in. Now, whether you put it on paper, in your head, whatever, but there's still that. Let's say you keep going. You have a family. Let's say you meet someone, you have a family. Okay. Now you're talking about, okay, how much do I make? How much do we need to live? And it's the same kind of equation. And then you start having kids. That gets even more complicated because now it's like, okay, well, that we became bigger. How much I'm getting in? What do I need to do to save for my kids, if at all? It's up to you, but I'd advise you do that. And then if you start growing things, you start moving up, it just that equation is the same. And it really just comes down to like, where am I going to, and I'm getting back to your point. Where do I want to set my goal of equilibrium to where I'm getting enough in and there's not the amount going out, what's left equates to how much I want to save, invest, and do what I want to do. Those things have to be diligently looked after. I use Quicken.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't get in Quicken daily,
mm-hmm.
it is a bear to like get, because during vacation, for instance, week and a half goes by, I come back and I'm like, I'm still not caught up with Quicken stuff to make sure inflow, outflow, go here, that kind of stuff is all lined out and I know exactly where it is. But I'm really diligent about it. I have to be, because your
of course,
income, outcome, all that stuff, all that, it's a huge deal. So I have to start planning out. Okay, so let's say we go beyond that, the month of expenses you have in order to like cost of living, savings, investments, whatever.
Which even with the best of intentions, that can happen sometimes.
Yeah.
Right.
So now I look at 3 months out, I look at 6 months out, I look to a year out, and I say, okay, 6 months, this is where I have this I want to do. What do I need to do in order to get there? I have, a year out. Okay, I kind of want to do this next year. How am I going to plan my finances around to get to there? I think that's important for everybody to kind of look at and go, okay, look, because it's not really about just this month. It's about 6 months from now. Where you're going to be. Now, you don't know about your job. You don't know about any of that stuff, but that's what emergency funds are for and all that kind of stuff. So contentment, I guess I'm going to get a roundabout way. Contentment gets to the point where you're like, I'm good with, I know my family's living how I want, I'm content with how I'm happy to live. I'm content with how much I'm saving, and I'm got enough to where I know in the future something, I'm planning for the future with that. So my contentment is equal to all that stuff lining up.
Okay. Well, it says in Proverbs, the plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. So that really kind of speaks to what you just said, as far as just, making sure that, you're diligent about your money, you're diligent, you're practicing good stewardship, and you're not being hasty with decisions, right? I think a lot of money problems are, we live in a satisfaction culture, and people think of money as a way to achieve satisfaction. I used to think that way. More money I had, the more satisfied I'd be. Now I feel, more often than not, I feel the more security I have, the more satisfied I'll be, right? Like for me, I don't want a $1 million home. I don't want expensive cars. None of that really appeals to me, honestly. It doesn't really, right now I just want my kids to be safe, my wife to be safe, and for us to be moving forward, so you were talking about the different, I'd love to talk about this and get an opinion. My wife and I did Dave Ramsey, and we actually got pretty far. Like, we wiped out a ton of debt. I don't necessarily agree with 100% of the principle of Dave Ramsey, because,
me neither.
And I'm not saying that I think he's doing anything wrong. I really am. A lot of the stuff I do agree with, the way he talks about planning and the snowball effect. Those are all really good principles. But I don't agree with the entirety of the philosophy, in the sense that, especially in your younger years, when you can make hay, right? Like you're in that work mode, that build mode. So, what would you say is, in your opinion, the best philosophy? Or would you say the best philosophy could be? Okay, let me say this. The best philosophy does not work for everybody.
Yeah. Everybody's going to have some different opinions about things. But I'll go back to this and say, like, if you got to look for what I look at, the economy, how does our economy work in the scope of, like, how do corporations, what do they do with their money? What do banks do with their money? What do the insurance companies do with their money? Right?
Yeah.
They're not just putting it under the mattress. They're not putting it in, they're not putting it in savings accounts. They're actually using a lot of loans, a lot of investments. It's like a constant thing of a loan here and push it here, push it. It's always influx, outflux, but there's always there's always an amount of debt going on somewhere. Mm-hmm. And debt's not, I guess this is where I'm at with why debt's not necessarily a bad thing, because you can use that debt for purposes. Mm-hmm. There's a couple systems I looked into, because I'm, and they may work for some people, but there's like the infinite banking concept, which is you take out, if you own a home, you have equity in your home, you take out like a home equity line of credit, you use that line of credit basically to like fund your expenses, and you're paying that back plus the mortgage, right? So it's kind of like what I do with my American Express card. It's like you use this equity line of credit and you're paying that back every month. And that allows you to be more, you can put more towards your mortgage and pay it off faster if your income and outcome is it reaches a certain level. Okay. Velocity banking. I'm sorry. Infinite banking is using whole life insurance policies, right? I got that backwards. Velocity banking is using the home equity line of credit. Sorry. Velocity banking. I didn't like that very much because I didn't, it just, to me, you had to, the amount of expenses you had versus what your home, it was like it had to be a lot. Your expenses that you spend living life have to be like really, way less than other things. Infinite banking is you take out whole life policies that you're funding, and then that actually has an investment value that builds interest, mm-hmm. and you borrow from it to buy things.
Borrow from the death benefit.
You borrow from the death benefit, yes. Yeah. So it's like it's a stair step thing, where you pay into it for a few years, whatever amount of years, until you get enough in there that's able to be borrowed from, you use for like buying a car. And then instead of paying somebody for a car loan, you're paying back your insurance, your life insurance policy.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, you keep building on that capital that you have in that insurance policy. You're just borrowing from it and putting it back, 401k loan. It's kind of I use that all the time because it's like, I'm paying myself back. I'm not paying anybody else. So I'll take out a 401k loan for something big. I'll just pay myself back. I'm earning interest on it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm not really, it's considered a debt, but I'm really just paying myself back.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess for me, I do all kinds of things, man. So my best philosophy is really, I look for my maximum amount of cash flow I can get a month.
Mm-hmm.
Without defaulting on loans and all that kind of stuff. I want to keep track of that. I want to make sure any debts I incur are things that I deem worthy of that. I consider that a very serious thing. So I just don't go out and get a loan for just everything. That's not true. I try to use what assets I have and like borrow from those for things so that I'm not just going out and doing all this kind of other stuff. Okay. So my best, the way I do it probably isn't best for everybody, but I have, there's more coming in than going out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I've messed around with some investments, but it's really volatile. So I still have an investment account. I still have money in there, whatever, but it's not like I'm not doing any kind of like trading or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of just do S&P 500 type of funds and stuff to kind of just do a little bit just to have some in there, but most of it's with a home equity line of credit, and I use that and I'm paying it back or whatever as quick as I can, kind of stuff.
Okay.
That's how I work. I maximize my cash flow, however way that is. I try not to have as much debts and loans. I don't want a lot of them, I try to keep that to a minimum,
mm-hmm.
but I don't begrudge like going out and getting some kind of loan for something. If I'm like, well, yeah, that's something that we really need or whatever, as long as my cash flow works,
mm-hmm.
I'm cool. So that's my way of doing it. I do save. Mm-hmm. We do save money. And I kind of divide up savings to like there's a savings and investment. It's kind of how I line it out. And I do that every month. So investment to me is not just buying stocks or whatever. It's really paying back and putting into the house, or it's paying more back. If I have a home equity loan at the time, making sure I'm paying that back. If I got a little extra, dump that in there or something.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I do it. In the future, I think that's going to change too, because I kind of want to I want to expand that investment thing out a little bit. But tithing. So tithing for me, we currently aren't involved in a church on a routine basis.
Well, I think, all right, so
I know that's where I'm getting to.
Yeah, for me, tithing doesn't necessarily mean money. Right?
Correct.
And that's one of the reasons why I love the current church I'm in, because they're very clear that, yes, they appreciate tithing if it can happen, but they would like for you, if you can't put money out, put time out, put all those things out, right? So the pressure's off, right? The pressure valve's open. You know, give where you can, what you can, how you can, right?
Yeah, I mean, when we were church shopping, I should say, we went to this one church, and it was like they spent 20 minutes talking about how you shouldn't just give 10%. You should give us as much as possible so we can do all this stuff. And it was like this whole thing. They were talking about how all this stuff, and they were really radical. It was like a cult, man. It was like, no.
Pass.
And you know, when I do believe your cash is, you know, your actual money you have is part of tithing, but it does go beyond that. Mm-hmm. Am I helping people? And you know, look, there's it's not like I'm saying, I don't think, in my personal opinion, that means that every time I get money from somebody, there's an automatic, you know, significant percent off of that just goes into a tithing fund or something. Mm-hmm. I don't do that because it goes beyond the dollar amount that I have. There's times when I give way more money. There's times I don't give anything, but there's also times when I give way more time, all this kind of other stuff. There's a lot of times though, his kingdom is everything. You know, when I had a homeless man live in my home for like almost a year, that was a lot of time, a lot of money. I'm giving back to his kingdom. That's part of it. Now, look, we should always keep in mind that nothing is ours anyway. We're stewards of everything that he created. So the betterment of his kingdom involves everything, not just one thing.
Proverbs 21:20. In the house of the wise are stores of choice food and oil, but the foolish man devours all he has. Reggie, you are full of wisdom because you keep feeding right into all these Bible verses that I've plopped up, man. So I think that, you know, I think part of what you say is true. I don't think there's any finite singular way to be good or bad at it. I think it's, you know, I think financial growth involves a certain percentage of risk, period. There's not really anything you can do to get away from it.
No.
You know, and I've talked to a lot of people. My father-in-law is a very, very smart man when it comes to money. Like, you know, meet those people that are just gifted with that. He's very gifted with that ability to handle money, and he takes calculated risk, right? And I think because he's willing to take those calculated risks, he's grown and become and a very generous man. My wife's family's super generous people, love them so much. But you know, I think it's different for everybody. I think if you tried to I think that's the struggle, right? Like everybody wants their thing to be the thing, right? I want my thing to be the thing. And I think if applied properly, a lot of different financial strategies can work, depending on how well and deep you're willing to get committed into it, right? But I think we live in a world where following a single strategy is going to get you a single style of result, right?
Yeah.
I think that having a good combination of attacks and strategies, especially when it comes to financing, but also using good biblical sense. Don't be wasteful with your money. Be generous when you can.
I do want to make a point though. Okay, we live in a society where things cost money. If you belong to a church, you should be a part of paying for things their church has to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's going to be hardly anything from you, but sometimes that could be almost everything you have.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of people who start with these church plants and stuff like that. And for the beginning of it, man, it's all about how can we pay the bills this month?
Well, Encounter, when we were there, I know that their beginnings, it was like a library. They were in the library or something.
A school,
or a school.
All kinds of things.
I mean, heck, for the amount of time we were there, they're probably still there inside the old Walgreens, right? So, I think that there's,
Well, I'm just saying you have to, if you're a member of a church body, you need to have a financial responsibility to that church body. That's all I want to say. That amount can vary.
Yeah.
The Bible just gives you an example, say like 10%, but it also gives you an example of giving everything.
Well, and a lot of it too is, hey, one way of doing that, and part of my tie to the church is I'm a donut dude. I come and get the donuts. I pay for all that. I pay for the juice, the milk, and I don't want any recognition for it. But what that is that's my way of saying, here, man, the church's coffers can go for helping others instead of going for this. So let me help the church with this, so that the church doesn't have to be concerned with this, and that financial part that they want to give to that can go to something more powerful, a family in need, something like that. So there's lots of different ways to do it.
Yeah, I mean, but it goes beyond money. That's the whole point. Yeah. But and I just must stress, it is your responsibility to contribute to that church body. Yeah, if you are a member of a body, you need to be contributing.
Absolutely.
I mean, look, that's what it's all about. Now, there's been many times when you don't have it. Well, that's okay. But as long as everybody's diligent and stewards of their stuff, you should be able to compensate there. Mm-hmm. Give a little bit more here, a little less than, a little more here, less than. I mean, that's the way it is. But I think it all comes down to the love of money and how you look at money. If you realize that it's just really not even, it's just some stupid thing we use to barter for goods and services. It's not really, it's not all that. Like, sure, I get it. You got to there's a lot of people that don't have it and it sucks. Been there.
Mm-hmm.
I know. And I guess that's where I'm going. Everybody's at a different point. It could be really critical for you. It could be not critical at all. Or it could be something you don't even think about whatsoever. It's just meh.
Well,
right?
for me, all right, so we're going to talk about me personally a little bit, which I'm not normally a person to do. So right now, and this is just speaking truth, right? I have nothing to hide. I'm 100% out there. Right now, money's kind of a burden to me in a way. Like, and I know I'm in a season, right? I know I'm in a season where, inflation's here, a loaf of bread, the average cost of a loaf of bread nationally was $1.59 before COVID. It's almost $6 now. So I realize, okay, so we have inflation and it's more than 4%. I don't care what the lie is. It's more than 4%. I work multiple jobs, and for me, the burden is not necessarily the money. The burden is the feeling at times like I'm just lashed to that wheel, like I can't get away from it. You know what I mean? Like you're just caught in the grinder, and they just keep processing you through, man. Like you're gonna, and I know it's a season, and I know through, what God tells me that there's gonna be seasons of great bounty and seasons of drought, and you just have to be able to deal with those things and be grateful for where you are. But honestly, something that I struggle with as of late, and is just this feeling that money's like a yoke, and I can't. I don't. It's not that I don't have it. It's that I need to really be in that working part of myself, and I'm not a spring chicken anymore. Like, I'm not 30 years old, so I don't have that. I can work harder than most people 20 years younger than me. That doesn't necessarily mean that I want to, because you reach a point in life where you're like, is it worth it? And I know that it's to protect my family, and I know it's to provide for my family, and I know it's so that I can, live life and do the things that need to be done, and the expenses and all those things. But as of late, it's just been very, it's almost like every decision that I make in some way is tied to money. Every conversation that I have is in some way tied to money. And those conversations have become very, very burdensome at times. And so I have to pray a lot. I have to really talk to God about, how do I deal with this? Not in the money part of it. That doesn't really, God provides, right? I'm okay with that. It's the, how do I get off the motorized hamster wheel? Like, and I'm not talking lawnmower engine. I'm talking about 368 cubic inch. Like,
well, I mean, look, dude, here's the thing.
I'm sorry, I couldn't pass it.
Nah, dude, our current country, culture, everything, there's a lot of complexity around everything. There's really not very many things that are truly simple.
No, not anymore.
Now, concepts, we have some truly simple concepts, but if you look at how much stuff and how many bills and how much things we have today we pay for compared to even 50 years ago, it's hugely different about what we actually have as a monthly expense now that isn't a necessity, quote unquote, right? We spend so much more money now for a lot of conveniences and stuff that weren't there not that long ago. And it's just getting more. So, I mean, it's not a simple thing. And the way I'll go here. There are, I would not forces, I would say the uber wealthy in the world do make things more difficult for others on purpose.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that keep us busy and occupied and thinking about things that are on purpose, because it's kind of what they want. They want you to be worrying about this, doing your daily thing, not worrying about, or worrying about your money and working more, working harder, doing all that for somebody else so that you can, I mean, it's really it's on purpose. And regardless of what your financial situation is, here's the one philosophy I've always, and I can't remember where I heard it the first time. You can always make more money, but you can't make more time.
No, you cannot.
And that's the thing for me that I've latched on to. I can't get this back. This little time here we've just been doing this moment, can't get it back. I can make more money. I can go freaking cut somebody's yard, make a little bit of money, right? I can do something, make money.
Yeah.
But I can't make the time. If you ask me, the most valuable resource that we have that we don't use is far greater than money, and that's time. We don't use our time efficiently like we should a lot of times. Now, I'm not saying take all your time and don't rest and don't enjoy things. That's actually the opposite of what I'm saying. But we have to understand that money is it's not evil. It's not good. It's just a tool that is used for means. Consider that as well as your time.
Yeah. Well, and money is not evil. The love of money is evil.
Yes.
Right. So, but, you know, that being said too, you know, let's talk a little bit about the biblical principle, kind of where the 10% tithing, you know, because I mean, I've been in churches where they're like, you have to give exactly 10%.
Oh, I've been in churches where they like want to see your like W-2.
Yeah.
And then they want to match that up for what you gave.
You know, we went to a church in Louisville, and Julie and I walked in, and the first thing the greeter said to us before we got in, we had never been to this church before, was not, we're glad to see you, not, hey, you know, good that you showed up. It was, the donation box is right there. We take checks in cash. Like literally that was the first thing he asked us was, you know, had we tithed that day? And I was like, dude, I've never even been in your door before. Right. So, you know, there's this just perpetual argument between a lot of churches of, you know, 10% or, well, as much as you can. And I feel like a lot of people, that's where a lot of the money in church thing gets kind of the nasty reputation, right? Like, you know, and then you've got, of course, you know, and I'm rabbit trail, but I'm going on it. You've got the Joel Osteens, you've got the Crespo dollars, you've got you've got all these prosperity preachers that want to make you unwealthy while they become wealthy. They want to, or as they like to say, we want to unburden you from your financial shackles, which is a nice way of saying, give me all your money so I can buy a private jet and have a facility that seats, you know, 80,000. And so, and that's not every church. Let's be clear. I know some great churches that are mega churches that, man, they're super transparent and they're giving a ton of money away to charities and a ton of money away in missions. And I have no problem with that. But I think one of the things that we need to help in money is clearing up this thing of, you know, oh, I can't go to church because I can't afford to. I can't tithe. I can't
that's bullshit.
Donate. That's garbage.
Yep.
Right? The church is, God doesn't care if you're rags or riches. He just wants you there. Right? Like celebrate, worship. Worship can be a form of tithe. Right? You know?
Well, man, look, like I fervently am against any church who requires anybody to give a certain amount. Absolutely against that. It's not a requirement. It should be led by the Holy Spirit on what you should give. Now, the spirit of generosity should be ever present. You should want to give not just money, but time and skills.
You want to love the people around you. You want to be generous with your love and your understanding.
And this is where I go with a lot of time, because I think nowadays, if you're in certain parts of the country, people are actually willing to give their money. Mm-hmm. They'll give money all day. You know what they won't do? They won't show up for a service thing.
No.
They won't volunteer.
They won't do
this. They'll write a check. That's not okay. I mean, again, churches need, people don't understand. There is so much to do and keep a church. Because if you have a building, if you have maintenance, you got maintenance, you got utilities, you got materials,
supplies for, you know, Bible schools,
whatever.
For,
there's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, it takes people. It takes money. It takes people. It takes time. I mean, look, there's so many ways that you can give. And there's some people who, I know one story, and I can't remember their names. They were doctors. It was a husband and a wife. They got to a point with their income, and I think it was like $100,000 they were making a year. They said at this point, anything we earn on top of it, we're just going to give to the church. Well, they opened their own practice, and that went to like many locations. They still gave everything on top of that $100,000 to the church. That's, dude, I know hundreds of thousands of dollars a year were given to the church just because they decided that's how they wanted to do it. That's fantastic. Look, I love that. That's great. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody has the spirit of that. I mean, God gives us all different ways to contribute to his kingdom.
That's true. That's very true.
You know,
we all have different talents.
We all do. Now, I think everybody should give some kind of money. Okay, sure. But again, variable. Because everything you have is his anyway.
Well, I believe if your heart is pointed towards him, you're gonna feel the natural need to want to give your talent, your time, your I mean, whatever it is that you have to give. And
here's an example. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, it's okay.
When I played at the Southeast worship team, right? I did not care about going to another campus to play worship. I considered it an honor just to be doing it in the first place. And some of these campuses were pretty far away. And for me, sometimes I'd have to leave at like way before the sun came up in order to get there for rehearsal on time, set up, and all this kind of stuff. So I did not have a single bit of problem getting up at like 5 a.m, getting my drum stuff together, driving out to some way out campus, whatever it may be, setting up, spending 6 hours or something doing services or whatever, packing all my stuff back up, sweating my balls off doing it, and then driving all the way home, getting everything back unorganized. It was like I never had a problem with that. And you can't put a value on. I mean, look, what are you going to do? Stamp that and say, "Oh, that was this much money." No, to me, what I got out of it was way more than what I could ever give.
Well, dude, you drove how far to Encounter every Sunday?
Oh yeah, that was a long
drive, dude. Oh, by the way, if anybody hasn't realized it by now, my man Reg over here is a hyper talented drummer. I've listened to him play. My man has the rhythms. He has the rhythms. Dude, he just has the rhythms.
But I gave so much. There's so much of that I gave to his, and I would tomorrow. I mean, I never had a problem using my talents and skills and time and, whatever money was, like replacing drum heads or drumsticks or drum hardware or helping the church do something with their drum stuff or their PA stuff. Or I was so wanting to help, right? Using my skill set for his kingdom in a very deliberate fashion was amazing that I could do that. But it's no different than if I were to go to my neighbor and help him, clean up a tree that had fallen down. It's no different than if somebody's really struggling and I just order some groceries and have them delivered to them. It's no different than, look, it's service to his people. That's it. As long as you keep that attitude of like, what can I do? You're fine.
Yeah. It's about sacrifice, right? And sacrifice isn't always green, right? And let's be honest. And this is something that you and I have talked about this many, many times. And I'm not picking on any particular church when I say this. If the Western church was doing its job, money wouldn't even be an issue.
No.
Right? It would be 5,000th on the list of the 5,000 things that the church should be doing, right? So, and
keep in mind too, there's a lot of stuff you have to do in order to protect people.
Yes.
Because you have, even in the church, you have people who take advantage of things and stuff. So, it's, again, there's complexity involved here because we're sinful creatures.
Yes, that's absolutely true.
There's that too.
Yeah.
I did want to go back.
Okay, lay it on me.
And talk a little bit about inflation.
Oh, my worst enemy.
Well,
go ahead.
Let me tell you this. It's a Ponzi scheme for the government.
It absolutely is.
Yeah. Let's just be real.
Yeah.
Now, what exactly is it? The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics calculates the Consumer Price Index. The Consumer Price Index is they take a bunch of goods and services and they say, okay, this is how much it is. It tracks the changes of like the cost of food and beverages, housing, apparel, transportation, education, communication, recreation, medical care, and some other like smaller goods and services, right? So it incorporates they call it the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. It's also consider the producer price index too. And the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, PCE. Okay. All three of these things. Okay. The PPI is the changes in price that companies receive for the goods and services they sell each month. So that's how much the companies are actually getting for their stuff. PCE, the Consumption Expenditures Price Index, is actually how much consumers pay for goods and services in the economy. All three of those things go into how inflation comes to be. That's what it's based on, is kind of what those are determines your inflation. The Federal Open Markets Committee determines that they did determine that a 2% inflation rate is the optimal employment and price stability. So that means like, if your inflation goes like the cost of things goes up a little bit, like 2%, that's like a healthy growth where you're balancing things out. What happens and what's going on now is where prices for things are way more than 2%. They've risen over monthly farther than that 2% by a lot. And you have where your $1 is now worth less than what it was, because it doesn't cost just $1 to buy that thing. It's now like $4.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, I mean, that's really what it boils down to inflation. And it's all the Federal Reserve does some magic with interest rates and stuff like that. I'm far beyond an economist or macroeconomics professor or something like that, but it is all just people that just say, let's do this and let's do this. And remember when I was talking about how banks and insurance companies, how they use their money, that prime interest rate that the Federal Reserve kind of bumps up and down a little bit is affected. I mean, those interest rates that the companies and stuff we're dealing with are directly related to that prime interest rate. So it gets really stupid, but at the end of the day, it's really a decision people are making way up there about how they can help, spur the economy and stuff.
Well, and the thing we also have to keep in mind, and this is something that I've never understood where this became normalization, going along with what you said, is think about interest rates. What are interest rates actually? Interest rates are profitability, right? The reason a credit card company charges you interest rates is because if they just let you pay that amount of money back and they never charge you any interest, they're legitimately not going to make any money. So part of their profitability is interest rates, right? And it's the same thing with the new home mortgages. Banks' interest rates have gone up. Their profitability has gone up. So one of the lies that we kind of accept about inflation is, well, the cost of goods naturally goes up. Well, it does. Again, at around a 1.5% to 2% rate of inflation, right? And that's not monthly, by the way. 1% to 2% is not a monthly thing. If it went up 1% to 2%, that's what it's doing right now. Like it's been doing that perpetually. And as far as the mortgage rates going up to control inflation, you're doing a terrible job. Right? Like let me speak as a consumer to the mortgage index going up for its rates. You're doing a terrible job. It's profitability, right? So I don't feel sorry for credit card companies. I don't feel sorry for banks. I don't feel sorry for, all of these predatory loan companies. Oh, well, no, it was 24%. Now it's 29%. Just cry me a river. You're making hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars off Americans' backs. And you could do the same thing and still survive and still grow and still profit and go back to 3% on your mortgage. You're just not gonna pitch me that. There's a wave of, I don't know if it's neglect or ignorance. I don't know which one it is, where we have accepted what we're being told, right? Inflation is directly connected to government spending, which right now is wildly out of control. I think you and I can both agree on the fact that our government spends far more money than it needs to. It's also directly connected to, here's an example. I am a property company. I own hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres across the U.S. And I want to now get into growing corn. So I'm going to take all my property and grow corn. But farmers can grow corn and sell it cheaper than I can because they already own their land. They don't have to pay employees. So what do? I march my way up to Capitol Hill and I start greasing palms. Well, if you pass this bill, I'll be able to produce this much corn in a year. But there's no conversation about the farmer that goes bankrupt because you've priced him out. We have fooled ourselves into believing that our government is doing everything that they can. They're not doing 10% of what they can.
Well, true.
So part of inflation is, you're very right. It's a lie. It's a money grab. That's all it is. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's just a way of taking more from us so they don't have to give as much.
Well, inflation, because of you have a supply and demand thing.
Yeah.
Okay. You have a limited supply, but you have a demand that's high. So therefore it drives your price up. Mm-hmm. That you can understand. It's a thing or something that is, but when you have arbitrary, because this goes to the actual country economic level, mm-hmm. that it's just absurd and how they manage that stuff. And I think, again, I can't say this enough. A lot of people still don't understand that the Federal Reserve is not part of the government.
It's not. No, not.
It's a private company.
It is.
That dictates.
I would call it more a Wall Street company than I would anything to do with the government.
That's what I mean. I mean, and look, since we're talking about this, the World Economic Forum, what do they say? And this is all Schwab's, the Soros's and all that stuff get together, and they say their goal is for everyone to not own anything and be happy. That should frighten every single person, and I should tell you what their mindset is.
For sure.
That's really what we're dealing with when talking about money and finances here. It is very easy, and I think that's what, Jesus talked a lot about things, and one of them was that, when his interaction in Luke with a couple of the tax collectors and the soldiers, mm-hmm. And I'll read this in Luke 3:12. He said, and some tax collectors also came to be baptized because, he was preaching. People were coming to him. I don't think a lot of secular people understand that. It wasn't like Jesus was just this dude that had this booth somewhere. He was it wasn't like that. He was going around performing miracles and people were hearing this and I know, dude.
I'm sorry. I'm going to the Jesus booth.
I know. But I mean, but it's no, he was think about I can't even think of a famous person that would make sense, but he was getting attention because of he was going around and teaching and like performing miracles and all this stuff. People were flocking to him because of what he was doing. It wasn't just like one or two people. We're talking like hordes of people who were like always coming to him at points of his ministry for like things. Thousands of people. Anyway, so at this one point in Luke, he goes and some taxers came to be baptized, and they said to him, "Teacher, what shall we do?" Because they're like, "We're getting baptized. We believe what you're teaching, but we're like taking people's money. Collect no more than what you have been ordered to." Because what tax collectors were some of the most corrupt people there was then. They were looked at with extreme disdain because they would just freaking say arbitrarily what people should give them, not really whatever. So he was telling them, no, collect no more than what you have been ordered to do. And then the soldiers said to him, "What about us? What shall we do?" And he says, "Do not take money from anyone by force or accuse anyone falsely, and be content with your wages. Don't extort people. Don't violently come after them for their money. Not by force. Don't do any of that." I brought this up because the Federal Reserve, a private company, but yet, and you have the Internal Revenue Service, who's my favorite government organization. They can, by force, take away everything. They can put you in jail.
Yes.
And they can even, I mean, if you resist, they'll kill you. So
they can literally, with no provocation at all, tell you you didn't do something, not provide reason or a reasonable explanation, and require you to pay the money or be penalized by law.
Well, what happens is like they can come at you for some kind of tax thing. They'll start they'll like, garnish your wages and do all this kind of stuff. Then you have to then, with your garnished wages or whatever they took away, you have to then go submit all this stuff to them while they're wrong, which takes a long time. When that's all fine and done, let's say you win, you might get some of it. It's such a,
well, and
such a show,
the reason
man.
for that is they want you to give up.
Yeah, of course they do. They want you to not even try. Like they want to make it so painful that you just, you're so scared that you don't do any of this stuff. Right. But anyway, I guess what I'm saying is like, we have to understand it with money and finances that the world has a love for money. Our government has a love for money and power. And that's what they're doing for that. And it's a definite thing that gets used all the time for that. I mean, Matthew 6:20, no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth.
No. So
everything we're saying about money, look, we've gone all over the place here, but whether it's inflation, we're talking about stock market investment, or your family finances, or when you're working for a corporation or you're working for yourself or whatever, the love of money is definitely where you don't want to be. And I would just say the most important thing is just having a generous spirit, that you just try to be generous with what you got.
Well, and also remember that it's a season. Sometimes we have seasons of great fortune. Sometimes we have seasons of falls and shortfalls. And at the end of the day, if you don't put your worth in your dollar, then it'll never be a concern to you. And that's not to say, I'm not telling you be like, don't balance your checkbook. I'm not saying any of that. You need to be responsible, but at the end of the day, if you're spiritually centered and you're working, for the betterment of a church or for your family, honestly, money's not going to be the primary in that situation. It's going to be a good lick down the list. And it's a lesson I need to learn as of late. Again, I'm struggling with money right now in the sense of it just being this heavy burden to me that I'm carrying around, and I'm really trying to find some equilibrium with it. And it's hard to do, you know?
Well, everybody, I mean, look, I've been in those situations where the most important thing I can think of is like, where's my next dollar going to come from?
Mm-hmm.
I've been there. I mean, you know, it's just, it'll suck the life out of you.
Mm-hmm.
The challenging thing is to understand if you just keep trucking at it, keep pushing. Then the more you stress about it, probably the less progress you're going to make.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to rest in him, have faith, keep doing what you can, and there's something that will happen.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay. I mean, that's just the point of it. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, look, at times money is like the most critical thing, especially in the society we live in, because, you know, it's like, if you can't put gas in your car to get to work,
then that's a problem.
You have a real problem.
Yeah.
You know,
one of my favorite things is I was with a guy one time and he was talking about that. He was in a bad spot and I spotted him some cash to get some gas. And the guy goes, just call an Uber. And I'm like, dude, if he doesn't have money to put gas in the car, he's not going to have money to pay an Uber. But then I thought, yeah, that's our current society, right? That's our current society in a nutshell.
Right.
Right. But you know, I think this might be the first episode we get banned on. Might get bit off YouTube because we attack the IRS and the government. And
it's not really that. It's just telling people what it is. I mean, like, you know, I get, look.
Well, and the thing is the information that we talk about is readily available. Like you can go find it. Like I love how it's conspiratorial. No, it's not. Not at all. It's all there. It's all available. You're able to look at it. It's not conspiratorial in any way, shape, or form. It's actually legit. Like
it is. Look, if you want to get into like real complexity of things about how the country economics work, look, there's plenty of resources and stuff for you to get. It's a good knowledge to have.
Yeah.
Like how things work. If you're I would say this too. If you're having trouble with your family finances, there's a lot of faith-based financial advisors.
Yes.
Lots of them.
Yeah.
You know, and this is one of the reasons why being a part of a church is important. Mm-hmm. Because you have a community of other people who can point you in directions and stuff.
Well, and honestly, I mean, if you reach out, I mean, Dave Ramsay has lots of programs for people who are financially strapped that want to get started. Like, again, I don't have anything against Dave Ramsay. He's helped thousands of people get out of debt. I mean, he's done some really amazing things. He's a faith-based guy. He believes in, you know, tithing and charity and again, followed him for a while, and it was a tremendous help to my wife and I, right? Like it was a tremendous help to us at one period in our life. So you can always reach out because if they're a faith-based program, they're going to have a way to help you, right? Because that's what they're there to do, is to help you. So
yeah, I mean, and the thing about the Dave Ramsay thing, like if you did that program and you were successful at it, it's not like you would be like bad off. I mean, you wouldn't. You'd be great. You'd still be in a good spot.
Yeah.
Going beyond that and like how to use your money is where you got to kind of go beyond the Dave Ramsay processes and stuff. But anyway, I digress. Look, we're not economists. We're not bankers or accountants or anything like that. We just live it and kind of, we're at different points too.
Yeah.
You know, I come from a corporate management perspective and you're living in the, like, you're not self-employed, but you might as well be.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, it's my effort that pays me. Right. So,
yeah.
But you know, and if my employers are listening, they're good people. I'm not trying to bash you guys. You guys are great, but you know, I'm in a situation where the amount of clients I have, the amount of work I do is how much I make. Right. So, and they've been very tremendous about helping me find ways to enhance programming and stuff like that. So that being said, you know, we're coming from two very different places. You know, you've got younger daughters you're dealing with in that right now. You've got a son that's out on his own and moved out.
Yep.
I'm in the throes of, you know, like 4 months away from having 2 full-on teenagers, right? So, and it's a different game because teenagers, and man, I love my sons, and I don't mean this in a terrible way, are expensive.
Yes, they are.
They are expensive. And it's not that my sons are great. They don't ask me for a lot. They don't come after me for a lot, but just making sure they get to be, teenagers and live a great, steady life. That's a very hard road to plow for any parent. Right. And guys, just find your grounding. There are sources out there. There are programs out there. There's tons of them, not even faith-based. There's tons of standard programs that are out there to try to help people, right? Charities that have financial services, those things. If you're struggling, there's places to go. You just got to get out there and look, right? And, feel free to reach out on the Facebook or the
whatever,
and let us know, and we'd be glad to hunt something down for you. I'll go look and see if I can find you something. I don't like to see people struggle financially. I
want to say this too, though. I'm not a gambler.
Yeah.
I've never been a gambler.
No.
I don't really care. It's not really been anything I've ever wanted. I know a lot of people who are. The stock market is not the place to go if you're in a tight spot.
Yeah, it is not.
No. I just want to make that clear. Like you got some money, you're like, man, I really could use like a couple, $1,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
Don't look at the stock market as like the place to go.
Because that's not, even if it does get you $2,000, it's not going to be in a week.
Well,
like you need money now.
It's the same thing as going and playing blackjack or something. I mean, it's not a sure thing. It really is not.
Yeah.
So I just want to make that clear. Yeah. That is probably for those that, I don't know, are looking for a way to like boost your assets or wealth or something. I just, maybe if
you have a long-term strategy, sure.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's pretty volatile, man. I don't want to get into here, but the stock market is really volatile, especially over the last like couple of years, and still is. There's some good things you can do. There's like, you can catch a good trade or something, but I don't know. It's just not worth my time, and I'm not looking at it for that. I have some, like I said, I have some long-term stuff that I just put in there and leave it. It's not like I'm looking at that to generate some kind of massive
wealth, right?
No. So that's all. Anyway, look, questions, comments, fussing, cussing, likes, dislikes, whatever.
Go to the Facebook page.
Let us know. And
give us one of these.
Like and subscribe our YouTube.
Right. You can subscribe to our YouTube.
Catch us on the podcast.
Again, guys, we just love doing this because we really want to talk to people and let people know there's a different way of doing things. So
for reals.
There's 2 chairs. These are 2 mics. These are 2 guys. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you.
See ya.